श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। कृतण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां विशेषे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। व्यासम् अष्टनत्तारं शक्ते पौत्रमकल्मषं पराशरात्मनं देशगदातं तपोनिधिं नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिमित्कृपातमं वन्दे परमानन्दभारं। नारायणपरो व्यक्तादण्डमव्यक्तसम्भो मुण्डस्यान्तस्तु मे लोकः सप्तद्वीपा च मेदिनी। वार्ताय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणे स्वयं व्यासेन कृतं पुराणमुनिनां मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीमष्टादशाध्यायिनी अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीता अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवेद्वेषिणी। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम् अवतीर्णश्च कालट्यां केदारेन्तरितश्च चेता चतुष्पीठप्रतिष्ठाता चेताश्चक्रो गुरुः। Previously, we were looking at Sri Bhagavan explaining as part of what Prajapati said, right? So, at the beginning of the creation, Prajapati created Devatas and he created Yajna, and he said that through that Yajna you multiply. So, that means through Yajna, through karma, rites, and rituals, you satisfy the Devatas, and Devatas will give you your Ishtakamas. So, they will give you your whatever the desires, they will fulfill you that. So that's what he said. And then we were looking at Bhagavan explaining that karma also need to be performed for another reason. And that reason he was explaining, we were looking at in the 14th shloka, where shloka went like Annad Bhavanti Bhutani Parjanyad Anna Sambhava Yajnad Bhavati Parjanyo Yajna Karma Samudbhavaha. So from food are born the creatures, and from the origin of the food is the from the rainfall, and rainfall originates from sacrifice or yajna, and from yajna the actions yajna has actions as its origin. So the karma has its origin. So we were looking at the first part of this shloka. So Annad Bhavanti, uh, we were looking at the first part of this shloka, Annad Bhavanti Bhutani. That's what we looked at previously, I think. So Anna, from food, creatures are created, right? It's a matter of direct perception that from food which is eaten and is transformed into blood and Shukla Jonita. From that are born the creatures, the bodies of the creatures, and that's the Anna Sambhava. And the origin of food is from rainfall. That's what Bhagavan says. The food is originated because the food is grown when the rain falls. So that's why food is originated from the rainfall. And that's again is a perceived fact. And here Bhagavan also states that the utility of the actions. He says that rainfall originates from the sacrifices. Okay. He says that the rainfall from the sacrifices or the yajna from the uh, merit called apurva of the sacrifices, such as kariri and things like that, the sacrifices or agnihotra and so on. From them, the rainfall comes. The sacrifices here, again, rights and duties, the kariri yajna or agnihotra and things like that, the merits that come as apurva. So the merits that's called apurva, from that it comes. Now, as how the Agnihotra sacrifice becomes the originator of the rainfall, that's been explained, for example, in Shatapada Brahmana Ashtadhyayi Kanda. And there it is explained that in the section there it is explained where 6 questions in the form of dialogue between Janaka and Yajnavalkya is there, and that's there in the Brihadaranyaka chapter 4 as well. It is there, and also it is said by Manu in his Manusmriti. We can see that where he says that Manusmriti says, for example, Agno prastahuti samyagaditya upadishtate aditya jayate vrishterannam tata praja. When the meaning is when the oblations is properly poured in the fire, it reaches Aditya, Surya, sun, and from the sun rainfall comes, and from the rainfall food, vrishte Aditya jayate vrishte rannam. Okay, so from vrishti, from rain, annam, that is the food, and tada praja. So from there are born the creatures. So that's what Manusmriti says. So this again from vrishti, from rainfall again comes from the karmas. Ultimately, is what is said here. Uh, so again, we look at, for example, sacrifices. The rainfall results in ultimately results in the rainfall, but also we hear about, for example, there are other Shastriya things like, for example, music and things like that. Right? So, in, for example, Karnataka Sangita or Hindustani Sangita, there are certain ragas. When those ragas music is sung, it results in rainfall. For example, Amrita Varshini, Meghamalar in Hindustani and things like that. Those ragas result in rainfall. Again, if rainfall does not happen when that song was sung in that raga, it's not the fault of the raga, it's the fault of the singer. Okay, similarly, we see these kind of rainfalls when sacrifices are performed, many instances. Okay, say for example, when any Chandi yaga or Atirudra yaga and things like that, that's performed by I've seen this literally, for example, in Sringeri Sharada Pita, right? So when those things are great events are performed and multiple days sacrifice and things like that, on the concluding day, afternoon, suddenly the rain starts falling. No, even if it is in the midsummer, suddenly the rain starts falling. And this is also, we see that when you perform something at the end of the day, rain falls, it's considered as a good thing. That's why it is. That means devatas became or pleased with what you have performed. So whether it is a temple kumbhabhisheka or something like that, you always wish that at the end of that end of the day, the rain falls. So that's a good sign. So similar, this is all that is based on uh, this theme here itself, right? So where the karma that's performed pleases the devatas, and through that the rainfall comes, and that rainfall results in food, and through food we survive and we multiply, right? And creatures are born. So that's what mentioned here. And again, Acharya Shankara here in his Bhashya, again he says that the yajna here means the result. So yajna is not just the sacrifice itself, but the result of that which is known as apurva. So apurva means the unseen from which a sacrifice is said to assume between the time of its performance and the time when it becomes manifested, results becomes manifested. Okay. So apurva is, for example, one performs a rites or something, they perform. The results of that manifestation of that results may take some time. Sometimes it may be immediate, sometimes it may take some time. The time between those two is called apurva. So it doesn't mean that always the sacrifice immediately results, but there is in it that apurva time that could be short. Okay, that's the connecting link between the two. That is the cause, which is the yajna, and the effect, which is the rainfall here, for example. Okay. And that yajna, that is that unique result that we are talking about, the apurva, which arises, that is samudbhava, from the action, from the karma that is undertaken by the ritviks, from the priests and the sacrificer, the yajna who is performing that sacrifice, is karma samudbhava. So the sacrifice or that apurva, that unique result, which arises from the karma undertaken by the ritviks and the sacrificer, is karma samudbhava. It has action as its origin. Here in this example, we are looking at rain. Okay, so as an example, right? So that's what we are looking. So the sacrifice called the dharma or the merit is subtle, has action as its origin, and it is achieved through the activities of this priest and the sacrificer, because the enjoined actions are the cause of the unseen result, the apurva. That's what's said in this shloka. And Bhagavan continues explaining this in the next shloka, in the 15th shloka, where he says, Karma Brahmodbhavam Vidhi Brahmakshara Samudbhavam Tasmat Sarvagatam Brahma Nityam Yajne Pratishtitam. Know that karma has Veda as its origin, and the Vedas has immutable as its source. Hence, all pervading Veda is forever based on the sacrifice. So, Pratipadartha, karma means duties, Brahma is Vedas, Udbhavam means manifested, Vidhi means you should know, Brahma means Vedas, Akshara means the imperishable, immutable, talking about the Ishvara here, Paramatma. Samudbhavam means directly manifested. Tasmat means therefore. Sarvagatam means all pervading. Brahma means Veda. Nityam means eternally, always and forever. Yajna means in sacrifice or in the rights and duties. Pratishtitam means established. So if you look at the meaning of the explanation for this, so Bhagavan explains that again, know that the karma is Brahmodbhavam, he says. It has Brahma, it has the Veda as its Udbhavam, origin. So he says that the karma has Veda as its origin. So here Brahma means Veda. The Kosha or the dictionary says Veda Tattvam Tapo Brahma. So that means Brahma means all these things, Veda, Tattva, Tapa, all these things. So here it means Brahma means Vedas. So Bhagavan says that you should know, Arjuna, that karma has Veda as its origin. And also Acharya here says that Brahma Vedakyam Akshara Samudbhavam Aksharam Brahma Paramatma Samudbhava Yasya Tat Akshara Samudbhavam Brahma Veda Ityartha. Brahma Veda Ityartha. So Brahma means Veda. So he says that further the Brahma called Veda is Akshara Samudbhavam. It has Akshara, that is the immutable, imperishable Brahman, the Supreme Self, Paramatma, that as its source. So we said that karma has its origin in Vedas, and Veda has its origin in that Paramatma, in the Paramatma. That's what he said. That's the meaning here. So the karmas, just to repeat again, the karmas, which is the originator of that unseen results, the apurva, what we looked at in the previous shloka, those results has the Veda as its origin. And here again, Brahma means Veda, and that which has got Veda, this Veda alone as its valid means of knowledge is Brahma Udbhuvam. So That's why that is Brahmodbhuvam, that Veda. And he also says that you should know that only those actions which are enjoined by the Vedas are the source of invisible results, that apurva we looked at, that unseen results. The only those actions are which are source, which has the Veda as its source, results in those kind of results, and not any other action. Especially, for example, Srimad Saraswati calls out that not any other action propounded by heretics. So all these uh, those who are not studied, learned, understood Vedas, who preach those things will not result in. That's the meaning. So now the question comes: what is the difference between Veda and the scripture that's said by these preachers, okay, who have not understood the Vedas, who have not studied the Vedas, who have not understood, which makes, which again makes what is enjoined by the Veda alone right is, but not the other. So if you are saying that only Veda followed actions, Veda, the actions which has Veda as its source are the ones that resulting in that uh, uh, comes in that invisible results, that produces that invisible results, and not others. Why is that? What is the difference? Why, if somebody says do this and that, why you are saying that's not true? For this, Bhagavan says that uh, the Brahma that is called Veda is Akshara Samudbham. It has come, it has that Paramatma as its source. He says that here Veda Pratipadita eva dharmo nanya ityatha. That's what Srimad Saraswati in his Bhashya says that. And he also, it is also said that Brahma Vedakyam Aksharam Samudbhavam Aksharat Paramatmano Nirdoshat Purusha Nishwasanyayena Buddhipurvam Samudbhava Avirbhato Yasya Tadakshara Samudbhavam. So Srimad Saraswati in his Bhashya, for example, here explains that that is called Akshara Samudbhava, which is like breath of a man originates, gets revealed without being preceded by, that means not dependent upon intellectual cognition from the Akshara, from the Supreme Self, from Paramatma, which is free from all defects. So this Vedas, Akshara Samudbhavam, what we are calling here, Akshara as Akshara Samudbhavam, it has come from Akshara. That Veda is like a breath of a man. It originates just like that and gets revealed. It is not something one studied, learnt, or anything. It's just revealed to that person without depending on intellectual cognition, without depending on anything. And it comes from that Paramatma himself, who is free from all the defects. That's why then, not being the creation of any person, the text of Vedas is free from all doubts about the defects. Okay, and the originator of the right knowledge, it is authoritative with regard to all the supersensuous matters. Okay, that's tata cha पौरुषेयत्वेन निरस्तसमस्तदोषा शङ्खवेदवाक्यं प्रमिति जनकतया प्रमाणमतीन्द्रिये मतीन्द्रियर्थे. That's what Srimad Saraswati says in his Bhashya. Because it is not being the creation of any person, that means it's revealed by Paramatma himself. That text of Veda is free from defects. And it being the originator of the right knowledge, it is authoritative in all the matters. But the heretical word taught by those who are possessed of defects such as error, inadventure, imperfection of organs, deceit, and so on. Because, for example, these days we see a lot of sannyasis, gurus, and things like that coming for TV channels and things like that, preaching without any learning or anything aligning with the Vedas, there is probably deceit in that. They want that to be publicized and things like that. So that's imperfections, or those are cannot produce the right knowledge. Those things cannot produce the right knowledge. And that's what's said here. So Pakanda Vakyam, Pramita Janakamiti Bhavaha. So that Pakanda Vakya, that heretical statements, that will not produce the right knowledge. That's what Srimad Sun Saraswati says. And also, this is said in the Shruti as well. For example, in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it says that Asya Mahato Bhūtasya Nisvatita Nisvatitameta Tyat Rigvedo Yajurvedha Samavedo Dharvangirasah Itihasa Puranam Vidya Upanishadah Shlokaः Sutranyanu Vyakyanani Vyakyanani Asaivaitani Nishvasisvani. So Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says that those that are the Rigveda, the Yajurveda, the Samveda, the Atharvangirasa, the Itihasas, the Ramayana, Mahabharatas, the Puranas, the arts, Upanishads, the verses, the shlokas, aphorims, all these explanations, Vakyanas explanations, all those things are like the breath of this infinite reality, that supreme being, that Paramatma. All these are like the breath of that Paramatma himself. They are the Paramatma himself. So that's what it says. So the Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samveda, Atharvangirsa, Itihasa, Purana, Upanishads, all these things are his own breath. So that's what it says. So Asya Mahato Bhutasya, again in the Vishnu Sahasranam as well, we look at Eko Vishnu Mahat Bhutam Pratak Bhutan Ekasha. So like that we see, right? So when we're explaining that Narayana, from him all these, he is the Mahat Bhuta. So from him all these things, Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samveda, Itihasa, Purana, Vidya, Upanishad, Shloka, Sutra, Vakya, Anuvakya, and Vakya, all these things came. And since the Vedas came out, like the breath of a man from that Paramatma itself, it is called Akshara. It is immutable. Kshara means that's mutable, that changes, that Akshara is immutable. And therefore, Veda being the revealer of everything, it is Sarvagatam, it is all pervading. That's what Shankaracharya says. He says that Sakshat Paramatma Khyat Aksharat Purusha Nishwasavat Samudbhutam Brahma Tasmat Sarvartha Prakashakatvat Sarvagatam. So he says that because it is coming from that Paramatma as a like a breath coming in a man, it's coming revealed from that Paramatma himself. It is called Akshara, and that's why it is Sarvagatam, it is all pervading. And even though all pervading, the Veda is Nityam, it is forever. And it is forever is based on the sacrifice, because the injunctions about the sacrifice predominate in it. So the sacrifices are the Veda is Nityam, it is forever, and is based on these sacrifices. Sacrifices are predominantly explained in those Vedas, the rights and duties, and that's what is said. So that's why. So here Bhagavan is saying that since having originated directly from that Paramatma, the Vedas, which is all pervading, the revealer of everything, and is eternal, indestructible, it is Nityam, is from the standpoint of its purport based on the sacrifice called this dharma, which is supersensuous. So the meaning is that by rejecting the pseudo religion preached by the heretics, skeptics, or misbelievers, the dharma taught by the Veda is to be practiced. So Pakanda Pratipadit Dopa Dharma Parityagena. So that Parityagam. So that's what Sri Madhusudan Saraswati concludes. So he says that Veda Bodhita Eva Dharmonashtaye. So the dharma that is taught by the Veda is to be practiced. So again, the importance, this shloka is very important because these days everybody thinks that they can study Vedas, they can do everything that's said in the Vedas and things like that. But we need to understand who is teaching that, who is saying that, what is actually said in the Veda, and should follow that. So everybody should follow what is said in the Vedas and not something that's been said by everybody else. So what's said in the Vedas is the one that's going to give that invisible result. Bhagavan then says in the next shloka, he concludes this discussion. He says that evam pravartitam chakram nanu vartayati yaha aghayur indriya ramo mogam partasa jivati. So we were looking at the last two shloka, Annat Bhavanti. From that shloka, we were looking at this cycle of the world, the wheel of the world. Right? So the wheel that is in motion, that's being concluded here, saying that, O Partha, he lives in vain who does not follow here the wheel thus set in motion, whose life is sinful and who indulges in the senses. So evam means thus, pravartitam means set in motion, chakram means cycle, na means not, anuvartayati means follow, iha means in this life, yaha here, yaha means who, agahayu means sinful living, indriya rama means for the delightment of the senses, mogam means vainly, Partha addressing Arjuna, Saha means they, Jivati means live. So explanation for this shloka goes like this. Bhagavan addresses Arjuna saying, O Partha, he lives in vain, who, though competent for karmas, na anuvartayati, who does not, who even though competent for the action, does not follow. Here in this world, he does not follow the wheel of the world, this chakram, thus, that is set in motion by the Ishvara on the basis of the Vedas and sacrifices. So he lives in vain, who, even though competent for the karmas, does not follow in this world the wheel of the world that is set in motion by Ishvara on the basis of the Vedas and sacrifices. He who does not follow this wheel of studying the Vedas, performing the sacrifices therein, enjoined in those Vedas, as commanded by the Ishvara, that person lives in vain, whose life is sinful. Agha is agam means sinful, ayuhu is life. So aghayu means the sinful life, whose life is wild, whose and indriya rama, who indulges in the senses, who has his arama is sporting enjoyment with objects of indriya. So through the senses. So that's why who indulges in the senses, that person who has his sport enjoyment with the objects through the senses, such person is indriya rama. Such a person who indulging in those senses lives a life of agayu, whose life is sinful. That's what said. Arama is sporting and enjoyment. Uh, Rama means Ramante Yogino Yasmin. So he is enjoyment. Okay. Arama is enjoying that. So he is enjoying in the Indriyas. He is enjoying it. That's why Indriya Rama. So Bhagavan says that in the beginning, if you go back to the 14th shloka, in the beginning, it is manifested, in the beginning is manifested from Ishvara, the Vedas, and which is the revealer of everything, and it is eternal, it is faultless, and from that follows the knowledge of rights and duties, the yajna. And from the performance of those rights and duties, produce the merit or dharma or this apurva. That's we looked at invisible result. From that rainfall. Okay, from that rainfall, food, and from that creatures. In the same way, again, that follows the engagement of the creatures in action, right? From in the creatures in the karmas, performing this karma. So that's what we looked at. अन्नाद् भवन्ति भूतानि पर्जन्याद् अन्नसम्भवः यज्ञाद् भवति पर्जन्यो यज्ञकर्मसमुद्भवः कर्म ब्रह्मोद्भवं विद्धि ब्रह्माक्षरसमुद्भवं तस्मात् सर्वगतं ब्रह्म नित्यं यज्ञे प्रतिष्ठितं. So that's what we looked at 14th 15th shloka. So here Bhagavan concludes that saying that that's the status, and he, the one who does not follow that wheel, if you look back from Vedas, Yajna, from Yajnas, rainfall, food, from food, the karmas, the results of that, from Yajna, the results from that karma, from that, the rainfall, and then the food, and then the creatures, like this, the cycle that continues. So he who does not follow that wheel, that cycle, the sustainer of the whole world, the set in motion by the Ishvara, O Partha, he is the man of sinful life. That's what the shloka says. He lives in vain, indeed. For him, death is better than the life, because there is a possibility of him practicing dharma in another birth. If he is not practicing in this birth, there is possibility of him performing in another life. That's why the death is better. That's the meaning is in this shloka. And this shloka is also supported by the Shruti text. For example, in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, it explains this in detail, where it says, Ato ayam va atma sarvesham bhutanam lokah. That means now this ignorant man is an object of enjoyment to all the beings. So this man becomes an enjoyment. He brings happiness to all the beings. How does he do? Sa yajñuhoti yadyajate tena devanam lokah. So he makes oblations in the fire and performs sacrifices, is how he becomes such an object to the god. So devatas becomes happy from him, from this ignorant man, because he starts pouring oblations in the fire and performs sacrifices. And then that Upanishad shloka continues, Upanishad mantra continues. It says, Ata edanu brute tena shinam. So then he studies the Vedas, is now become an object of enjoyment to the rishis. So first he became an object of enjoyment for the devatas by pouring oblations and performing sacrifices. Now by studying and teaching Vedas, he became an object for enjoyment for the rishis. Rishis become pleased with him. And then Ata yat pritribhyo निपृणाति यत् प्रजामि त्रिचदे यत् प्रजामि त्रिदये तेन पितॄणाम. So he makes the offering to the pitrus and desires children, is how it becomes an object of enjoyment for the pitrus. Then अतः यन् मनुष्यान् वासयते यदेभ्योषणं ददाति तेन मनुष्याणां. So he gives to the men, he gives shelter as well as food. That's how he becomes an object of enjoyment for the men. And it says that Ata yat pashubhyas strunodakam vindati tena pashunam. So he gives food, fodder, and water to the animals, and that's how he becomes an object of enjoyment to them. So this ignorant man. And yadasya gruheshu shapada vayamsya pipili kabhya upajivanti tena desham lokah. And that beasts and birds and even the ants feed in his home, is how he became an object of enjoyment for all of them, all the creatures. Yada havai swaya lokaya rishtimichet एवं हैवं विदे सर्वाणि भूतानि निरिष्टे मिच्छन्ति तद्वा एतद्विदितं मीमांसितं. just as one wishes safety to one's body, so do all the beings wish safety to him who knows it as such. This is indeed has been known and discussed. That's what Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says. So Brihadaranyaka Upanishad here, in short, it says that the person becomes Devatas becomes pleased by him by making the oblations to the fire and performing the sacrifices. Rishis become pleased by him by studying those Shastras, Vedas, and teaching, study, and Adhyapana. So from study and teaching, he becomes Rishis becomes pleased. Again, last time I think we looked at the runas, Devruna, Pitruna, and all these runas. So then Pitrus becomes happy because he performs those offerings, Shraddhas, performs all those things, and he desires to have children. Pitrus become mm, happy, and the Manushas, humans, men become happy because he gives them the food and shelter, the Atithis. He gives them food and shelter. And then Pashus, animals become happy because he gives them food and water, fodder and water he gives them. And then in his home, he feeds the beasts, birds, ants, whatever that's there. He feeds them. He does not harm them. That's why they become happy. So like this, that man becomes an object of enjoyment. So that's what Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says. Therefore, in this shloka, the summary or the conclusion or in brief, this topic, what we are discussing here, is that action must be undertaken by the one who is qualified for the karma. But uh, who is qualified, but is unenlightened, who does has not that realization, knowledge of Atma Jnana. Ajnana. So Shankaracharya in here he clearly says that Ajnana, that is one who is Ajna, unenlightened. Ajnana adhikritena kartavyameva karmeti praganartha. So that's what he says. So kartavyameva. So for him, actions must be undertaken by him. So that's what this summary here it says. And again, Shankaracharya here concludes here saying that this discussion saying that in the verses from the verses beginning from fourth shloka of this Karma Yoga, where Bhagavan says that Karmana manaramba neshkarmyam purushošnate nacha sanyasanadhiva siddhim samadhigacchati. A person does not obtain freedom from action by abstaining from action. Right? From that shloka, fourth shloka, and ending with the eighth shloka, where he says that Nitam Kuru Karmatvam Karmajnayo Karmana Shirira Yatra Picha Tena Prasiddhe the Karmana. So where you perform obligated duties and through inaction, even the maintenance of the body will not be possible. From that fourth shloka to this eighth shloka, it has been proved that before one attains fitness for steadfastness in the knowledge of Atma, that Atma Jnana, one attains the fitness, it is bounden duty of a person who is qualified for the karma, but is not enlightened to undertake the karma yoga for the purpose. That's what is said in this shloka from fourth to eighth shloka. Atmajnana nishta yogyata prapte tadarthena karma yoga anushtanam adhikritena anatmajnena kartavyameveti tad. So that's what Acharya says here. So he must perform, the one who is unenlightened, he is qualified for the karma yoga. He should perform that. That's his bounden duty. That is his duty. He must perform that before one attains that fitness for the Jnana Yoga. That's what said. And he also says that from the shlokas 9th to 16th, where Bhagavan also says in the ninth shloka, for example, Yajnartat karmano netra lokayam karma bandhana tadartam karma konte mukta samachara. From 9th to 16th, there it has been clearly stated that competent person has to undertake actions and otherwise evil will come. So we'll look at that in detail next time. when we gather. So again, continue this discussion and look at this next time.